Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. It's Chris Hall here. I hope you can all see and hear me. Welcome to another Charity Digital Remote Webinar Day. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you're all staying safe and more importantly, sane. I think the length of my hair and the tally chart on the wall kind of says we're in, I think it's around the 4th week of lockdown now. And it's been really great to see and also share how the charity sector has really come together and kind of responded to the change that we've all sort of been thrown into. Please do keep up the great work. Here at Charity Digital, we're continuing to produce sort of daily content, webinars, podcasts, and update our product catalog as well to help you as charities adapt to what is now become then the new normal. And we've wanted to make that easier for charities to find the way to find what we're doing and all the content we're producing. And to do that, we've created a dedicated COVID-19 resource hub. By this afternoon, you can hopefully get it through our homepage, or you can follow the link that's on the screen now, which is www.charitydigital.org.uk/COVID-19 resource hub. We're updating this daily, and it covers everything from getting set up remotely to running virtual fundraising initiatives, and how you can digitize your services as well. We do cover it all, so please head over, check it out. Bookmark the page and let us know if you have any questions or stories you'd like to share with our audience as well, share with other charities. But on to today, I'm really excited about today's webinar. The charity sector has made some really good strides to become more accessible from both a design and recruitment point of view. And while the conversations are evolving in the right way, I think there's still a lot of room for action, particularly at times like now, with our emphasis on digital tech is sort of bigger than ever than it was before. And this webinar aims to provide you with that knowledge and skills to take accessibility tech back to your organisation and back to your peers and managers. To help you do that, I'm joined by a team of Microsoft All-Stars. We have Eve Joseph, CSR and Sustainability Manager of the UK Philanthropy team. We've got Elena Córdova Russ, Financial Service Customer Success Manager, and Casandra Marrero, who's the team's Product Marketing Manager. And they're joining us today to show you how to use accessibility tools in your charity, and also but why implementing them is why implementing this tech and building an accessibility strategy in your organisation is essential to sector inclusivity, your charity service delivery, and recruiting the best possible employees for your organisation. Before we get in, the usual sort of house rules. We are using a slightly different platform today, but the same house rules do apply. As always, with the remote nature of our webinars, we do ask for quite a large amount of forgiveness. There's a lot of us joining from various places today, so if we do have any internet hiccups or bandwidth issues, please bear with us. As usual, we'll be running through our content, followed by a Q&A section at the end. You can add questions by submitting them to, I think there's a question button on the bottom right of your screen. You should be able to just click that, type in, click send, and we'll get them through and get them asked. Also, if you need closed caption, you can also switch that on using on the same bar at the bottom. I believe it's just next to the question button, but someone will correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure. But please feel free to switch that on if you need them. Next, we will be providing all resources, slides and recordings after the fact, so please stick close to the inboxes. We tend to send them out within a week, so keep an eye out for them as they come in. Also, I want to sort of break any barriers of confusion when it comes to names. You might see, although I've said we've got Elena and Casandra with us today, they will be appearing as Megan and Lee for the purposes of the demo that they'll be walking you through today, so don't get confused. I believe Elena is Lee and Casandra is Megan, just for your reference. So let's get started. I'm going to hand over to Eve now, but please welcome all three of our speakers today, Eve, Elena, or Lee, and Casandra or Megan. Welcome to all of you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Chris. And I'm joining Chris on the branding of our attire today. So as Chris said, my name is Eve Joseph, and I am one of the CSR managers at Microsoft in the UK. I've worked with the charity sector for a number of years on different CSR focused projects, with accessibility being just one of the topics that I get asked about quite a lot. So before we hand over to Casandra and Elena, the Charity Digital team wanted me to share some insights into how and why accessibility is relevant for the charity sector, and just some high-level pointers into how to get started if you want to explore more once the webinar is over. Firstly, it's usually good to have a level set to understand what accessibility is when used in context of technology, as it can often mean different things to a lot of different people. When some people think about accessibility, they think about designing buildings and structures with accessibility in mind, or making sure that they're following accessibility compliance standards, both of which are great. But it's much more than that. It's about creating experiences that are better for everyone. It can be how people can access the cloud, or how you can consume or read content, or indeed how someone can access services from critical organisations, which we're totally all seeing at the moment in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So in short, when you or anyone within your charity thinks about accessibility, you should urge them to think about all of these topics that are on the screen now and encourage them to explore them all. However hard or daunting that might feel right now, just one step at a time will hopefully help you gain some improvement. Specifically, when it comes to charities and the relevance of accessibility to you, one of the areas which I think is underexplored is the ability for you all to influence in this space. As charities, you are the fabric of our societal DNA, and we're seeing that now more than ever as you come together to support many people during COVID-19. And never before has there been such a light shone on you as a sector. So I think there are three areas that I've popped here on the slide to bear in mind as Casandra and Elena take you through the next 45 minutes or so. The first one is culture and employment. And as you can see from this statistic, the unemployment rate for those with disabilities is much higher than for those without. Creating a more inclusive working environment will help you not only attract more diverse talent into your business, but also act as a sort of inspiration for others to follow suit. So a couple of examples here which you might want to think about. The first one is your facilities. So whether these are rented, whether they are owned, whether they're borrowed, it isn't just about the tech that you supply with your employees and volunteers, but the environment that you give them to work in. So for instance, in some of the Microsoft campuses, we've started to see some improvements, for example, braille and low vision signage in some of the kitchenettes, so that people who are blind or have low vision know what type of drink that they are selecting. So some simple steps, but really big impact. As charities, perhaps you could speak to your managers or your landlords about how to explore some options here. Secondly, how do you plan and organise your events and marketing? As charities, many of you will host numerous events and communications. Think fundraising events, newsletters, trustee meetings, industry meetups. How can you embed accessibility and inclusion into every event? And often this totally starts with a top-down approach. So ensuring your senior executives continuously reinforce the importance of accessibility is also important, and ensuring that you perhaps create an inclusive event handbook that goes across to every employee and every volunteer that wants to take part in an event in the name of your charity. A couple more examples could be using live captioning or utilising sign language interpreters. Or could you create a quiet space at events for people who might feel like they're quite overstimulated by being part of your event? So secondly, I think about the service users and your volunteers, for that matter, that you work with and you support. Can you influence their use of technology by sharing appropriate resources with them? And finding ways of once you have the knowledge of something and sharing that with the people that you work with. And then finally, how can you represent the voice of these service users in the products and services being developed by a multitude of organisations across the UK and globally? No one company can solve the challenges facing many with accessibility needs, but as charities, you have such a unique voice in this space, and you can offer critical real-time input into these creations. So to give you an example, Special Effect are a well-known charity in the UK amongst disabled gamers, and they were a critical part of the steering group who brought together with Microsoft our recent invention of the Xbox Accessible Controller. So without theirs and other charities' information, guidance and expertise, the controller may have looked and felt very different. I do believe, though, that in order to influence in this space, making a start and improving your own charity's use of accessibility tech is, as mentioned in number 1, is critical. And that is what Casandra and Elena are here to help you start with. They're here for you today. So as Chris mentioned, please do use the Q&A button as they walk through and make sure that you're getting the answers, the questions that you have answered where you can. I know Casandra and the team will share more resources after the call, but here are just a couple of things from me on the next slide. If you can you please follow MSFT Enable for any updates and ideas that Microsoft wants to share in this space on Twitter. That is your one-stop shop for lots of information and resources. And then secondly, we have something called the Disability Answer Desk, which not many people know exists, but it's people on the end of the phone or on the end of a chat to help anyone across the globe who has a disability utilising Windows and Office. There's information on the screen here, but please do share, as to point 2 on the previous slide, please do share and make yourself aware of this resource. So if you have any of your service users or any of the people that you're trying to work with and they're finding some challenges, send them to the Disability Answer Desk and hopefully they will be able to help them. So I hope that's given you a little bit of insight into how we think charities could really embrace the accessibility motion at the moment. And I'm going to hand over to Casandra and Elena, who are going to get much more deep on this topic with you. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Eve. Hi, everyone. Super excited to actually be here today and having been asked to come and present and talk a little bit more around what Microsoft's accessibility features can actually do to help on your day-to-day. My name is Casandra Marrero, and like what is showing as Megan, I am the Microsoft Teams Product Marketing Manager in the UK, and I'm also the Accessibility Champions Community Lead. With me today, I have Elena Córdova Russ, who is a Modern Workplace Customer Success Manager and also an Accessibility Champion. So just to start, and I know that Eve has done a fantastic job in setting a little bit of the scene, but I always like to put some foundations down. I know a lot of the things that I'm going to mention you've already heard or you may have seen before, but I think it's important to start with this. There are over 1 billion people with disabilities globally, and that is about 1 in 7 people. That is a number that we can't simply ignore. Some say people with disabilities is the largest minority, but I think they are the very fabric of society. The unemployment rate, like Eve mentioned a minute ago, for people with disabilities is more than twice the average. Approximately, when we're looking at worldwide numbers, 70% of people with disabilities are either unemployed or underemployed. And this population represents an enormous untapped talent pool at a time when we are all in need of great talent. And it's important to understand, when does disability actually happen? Disability happens at a point of interaction between a person and their environment. Physical, cognitive, and social exclusion are the result of a mismatch between what a person wants to achieve and an environment that does not support it. It is about the impact on our daily life. And you know what is one of the things that really baffled me sometimes when I think about it is that it took until the 21st century to get to this act, to the Equality Act 2010. And we definitely have not achieved to the fullest extent what is intended to achieve. We're in a journey. We like the World Health Organization definition as it turns the attention away from the actual condition to focusing on the barriers themselves. And once you can do that, it just needs kind of emphasizing how you can empower a person with a disability. So looking a little bit more into the context and the history of it, historically, people with disabilities have largely been provided solutions that segregate them, and such as, I don't know, residential institutions and special schools. Responses to disability have changed since the 1970s. People with disabilities started to organize themselves, and disability was more and more seen as a human rights issue. The first ever World Report on Disability, produced jointly by World Health Organization and the World Bank, happened only in 2011. And one of the important things is that policy has now shifted towards inclusion in community and education. So the transition is gone from an individual medical perspective where disabilities were considered as a personal health condition to a social perspective in which people are viewed as being disabled by society rather than their bodies. So basically a mismatch of interactions. And let us not forget, and I think this is super important, it's not always obvious when someone is living with a disability. We're talking about approximately 70% of disabilities being invisible. The majority of disabilities that are invisible could be either chronic illnesses, cognitive or mobility issues, vision loss, and many others often give no visible indicators. In addition, think of the increasing work that we have now to collaborate at a distance. This is potentially the first time for a lot of our service users within the charities and anyone that we work with that they've had to make full use of technology in the way that we currently are at. We're talking to people on the phone, via video conference, on text, and we don't necessarily always have the insight into the context itself, whether disability is present or not, or even what technology they're actually using. But what we do know is that when we place people and context at the center of our design process, like Eve mentioned before, the benefits multiply. And when we put accessibility and disability at the heart of design, we're not only making our products and services accessible to people with disabilities, but we provide flexible technology that meets the needs for everyone. For example, if you have limited reach or strength, speech to text is an important part, is an important feature to interact with technology and use your computer. With dictation built-in across Microsoft 365, all of the millions of people that break their arm every year can still stay productive. But in reality, we're providing technology that meets you when and how you need it. And there are many, many benefits that we can talk to. So if I look specifically at some of the benefits for some of the service users, the volunteers, and the donors. So if we're thinking about these people specifically, there are many benefits that actually come from providing a more accessible and inclusive way of communicating, engaging, and ultimately empowering people to innovate in new ways. Accessible technology can support your communities in creating a greater sense of purpose and meaning through increased awareness of the impact that each and every one is having on their communities, in society as a whole. It also allows people to have their voices heard. Accessible and inclusive technology thrives on transparency. Of course, super important is the mental well-being. We all know too well the stresses that actually these new ways of working bring, and engaging in the way that we are also brings. So accessible technology can support mental well-being. And looking at the benefits from a different perspective, it also creates an opportunity to learn new skills, which will hopefully boost your employment opportunities. Retaining and engaging volunteers also becomes simpler and more effective as you have access to the people and the data that you need at a time that you need it. And that ultimately leads to an optimized volunteer management model. So again, there are multiple benefits that we can all see. And Elena, maybe you want to talk to us a little bit more about the benefits for the charities themselves as well.
Sure. Thank you, Casandra. So if we move to the next slide, when we think about the benefits for charities, research shows that those with a digital strategy are ahead of those without it, because they are in a much better position. One of the benefits that these digital-focused charities found is that they increase their measurable impact due to that investment. They also reported that as a result, they increased donations, increased productivity, and efficiency. So enabling a more inclusive environment with the technology, they broke down barriers and silos, and that improved hugely the human interactions. Now, let's talk about our journey at Microsoft. If we start that at Microsoft, we're passionate about creating products and services that are accessible for everyone, including people with disabilities, we need to start thinking about what is our mission. Our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. It doesn't just begin and end with the products we create. It extends to the people we hire. So in order to make accessible products, we must have people with disabilities on our teams. That is why we have an inclusive hiring program, because people with disabilities have the creativity, the life experience, and the passion that make our company a better place to work and also bring to bear new ideas to push the boundaries of what is possible. So we build accessibility into our products so that they can be responsive to people's changing needs. So there are no limits to what people can achieve when technology reflects the diversity of everyone who uses it. Building accessibility into everything we do helps empower everyone to achieve more. Now we're taking an integrated approach to inclusion, and really we think accessibility starts with the culture. As I said, hiring talent with disabilities to ensure we create good products that work for everyone, then sharing it up systems. So our systems across the company think about inclusion from start to finish. Then we have the products, and now accessibility is built in and is not bolted on. They are embedded. And that's why today, in today's session, we're going to show you about features that you already have. You don't need to go and buy them. They are already there, but maybe they are hidden or you haven't discovered them. So we can talk about them and show you what is best for you. But we also think about the future, because accessibility drives innovation to change what's possible. So now we have put together some useful resources that we're going to share with you. So after this session, you're going to receive all of these links. We really encourage you to go through them. You're going to find not only the features that we're going to be showing in today, you're going to find all the different accessibility features that our products have. But also, I want to highlight a link that Casandra put in here, Tech Tips for Mental Wellbeing. As we all know, we are all facing an unprecedented change in our lives. We were currently with certain amount of stress and responsibilities, and maybe happiness or loneliness, plus now the pandemic. And now that we are all working in a completely different way, maybe some of you is the first time that you are working remotely. So you may find yourself like all this technology can be overwhelming. I really, really encourage you to go and check the Tech Tips for Mental Wellbeing, because you're going to find in there some tips that using the technology that you are going to showcase is going to help you to manage that mental well-being. Now, next step is the demo. Now we have been talking a lot, and we now need to make this a reality. So I'm sharing my screen, and hopefully you can see it now. I'm going to start with different features. And the first part, and I'm going to remove my video because I'm getting a bad network quality. So that is going to help with that. So I'm going to start with making your experience personal. And this is something that is going, the way that I think of this is kind of when I'm going to set up my office in my house, I need to think about what are going to be the resources or the tools that I need for it. That's the way that I think the first step when I think about Office 365 or Windows 10. I'm going to start with the settings in my Windows menu. These are going to be all the features that are going to sit in here, all the accessibility features that we have. So if you follow me, first of all, you can see that I have a massive pink pointer for the benefit of this session, so you can follow what I'm clicking. So I just go to my start icon, the Windows button, and I go to settings, and I'm going to land on the home settings. And what I'm after is to find ease of access, because in ease of access is where you're going to find all the different features that pertain to accessibility. So you click in there, you're going to find all the features related to vision that are in one place, all the ones related to hearing, all the interaction, all together, so you can find it much easier. As you can see, all listed by frequency of use. So for instance, if I click here in display, the typical that you can make the font bigger or smaller, the way that I change my cursor here, my pointer, I just went in here and changed the size and chose the color. But let's talk about color filters. I think this is one feature that can benefit to a lot of people, mainly for people who are colorblind, especially when red and green, I think colorblindness is a lot of times these colors are more difficult to discern. So with just one click, you can choose the difference. And now in order to do it and to make it more real, I'm going to open an Excel file that I have put together. Now I'm going to open also the settings so you can see how it works. And for that, I'm going to use Windows Divider. Again, I may be talking about different names and a lot of names of features. Don't worry, everything you're going to be able to find it in those links that the resources that we put together for you. So in order to have in one screen my Excel in one side and the settings in the other, I'm going to use a feature that is called Windows Divider. How can I get there? Well, I just go to my keyboard, I find the Windows key, and I press the right arrow. So my file is now on the right, and on the left, I can choose what I want to show. So I'm going to have color filters, and now I'm going to turn it on. And as you can see, I'm just changing immediately to the ones or the feature and the color that I have chosen. As you can see, it's not only applied on the Excel, also in all my devices, you can see here at the bottom. You can also find shortcuts key here. So just with the Windows, Control and C, you can change back to the original. Now, let's go back to my settings. And I wanted just to add something about some facts about colorblind, because 1 in 8 men experience color blindness, and more men than women suffer from this. And color blindness name is actually a bit deceiving, as it's more of a color deficiency, but it was deemed that the name was far more complex and was left as colorblind. But in fact, not many people are truly colorblind. So this is something that, again, this is setting as you're making your experience more personal, but maybe with this, someone else can benefit from this, now that you know where to find it. Another feature that I would like to show you here in Windows 10, I'm in my main page, and I don't know if you can see here down below, I just hover around and I can see my task view. How many times you that you're working with different trustees or charities, and you have been opening and being in different places in your computer, and you don't remember where you maybe saved something or what was the name of the important document that you were working a week ago. So with this, you can just find all the different documents and places that you have been in a chronological order. Again, I'm in a demo tenant, so I don't have much. But then whatever you want to go back, you just stop and click and go straight to there. In this case, I'm going to come back to my settings. Now, those are some of the features that can make your experience personal. But I think at this moment in time, that all of us, we are bombarded maybe with notifications with maybe you use Pair or you use Teams or your Outlook, or you have WhatsApp in one side, your children crying or asking for help in the other room. You need to control your notifications to minimize distractions. And I know that is not going to help you maybe with your children asking for your attention, but at least it's going to help you to have a little bit more time to focus when you're working. I don't know if you remember, but in earlier versions of Windows, the feature used to call quiet hours. Now it's called Focus Assist. Just avoid distractions, manage your distractions. So for instance, I'm here and I have different things open. I just go to my right-hand side, here at the bottom next to the calendar. I click in here, As you can see, my Focus Assist is on, so I'm not receiving any notifications. That doesn't mean that I'm going to miss those. So at my own time, I can go back to my task center and I can go and check exactly what has been happening during the day. Okay, I'm going to move now to improve my productivity. And when I think about improving my productivity, I always think of Cortana. How many of you have heard of Cortana? Cortana is your digital assistant, a little bit like Alexa. She will help you get things done in Windows 10. So for instance, maybe now that I'm working from home, I'm homeschooling, but I have a call with a trustee at 9 and I haven't sent an email that I have to do it before. So I'm going to use Cortana, maybe because I don't have all my hands available. So I'm going to click for this action in here, talk to Cortana. I'm going to click in here. Hey, Cortana. Open Outlook. Open Outlook. Outlook. So I don't know if you managed to hear Cortana, but she was talking exactly what you said. So on the screen, she was saying out loud. So now I didn't have to touch anything. I was just talking to Cortana. She has opened my Outlook. Again, for this demo, I'm leading. And I will send an email, the email that I need to send before I have a meeting with this new trustee. And what I'm going to send is Megan, the person that I'm working with. So I'm going to mention Megan, and I'm just going to put it in here. And as you see, her name has been auto-populated to the to section. Why am I doing this? The idea of something in your Outlook is when that person receives your email, when that person is going through her emails or his emails, because you have mentioned that person's name, that person is going to see it as highlighted, that there's an action, there was something in the email that that person needs to prioritize. And that really is a very handy thing to do. So again, I'm doing my breakfast to my children, at the same time trying to write this email. So I'm going to use dictate. Again, it's also in your Outlook in Office. So I just click in here and I have the opportunity to choose the language that I need. For this time, I'm going to use English. I'm going to dictate. Hi, Megan. Please find attached. Sorry, I need to position where. Hi, Megan. My network is playing with. Hi, Megan. Please find attached the file with the latest results of the forecast. Come back to me as soon as possible, please. So imagine that I didn't have those issues with my network and we didn't write this part. You can use dictate. Again, not only here, you can also use it in all the different Office apps. And then you say thanks, Lee, and attachment just with the subject. Imagine that I'm writing everything perfectly. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to send this to her. And oops, I didn't attach the email. And I received this reminder. How many times have you do this? How many times have you come back to everyone and say, sorry, I forgot to attach the file? So because you have made and running in here, it's going to allow you to remind you if you have promised something and you haven't sent it. This is not the only thing that you can do with mail tips, but I will talk to you later about it. I just wanted to show you here, now that I'm here in Outlook, that I'm going back to my inbox and I'm going to click in here. And I don't know if you have used Insights. I don't know if you know what Insights is. It's part of the My Analytics. I don't know if you have ever missed an important email or forgot a commitment you made with your coworkers, or maybe you have meetings that you have been invited, but you don't even know if more people are going to attend or if they don't have an agenda. A lot of things normally can happen because we're so busy, we're so engaged with our work and all the issues that are happening around us that we can forget things. So Insights is really the answer to all those questions, because it's an Outlook add-in that provides you actionable insights to help you stay on top of your tasks. For instance, I just click here, any email. At the top of my Outlook, on the right-hand side, I'm going to click Insights. And again, you're going to see this message that is going to give you also to take your time to get the works done. Prior to this session, we were talking internally and saying that all of us, we have a lot of back-to-back meetings. We don't have really sometimes time to action the things. We are just blocked and we are saturated with work. And I really recommend you Insights, because look, right-hand side, these are the insights that this application is finding in my Outlook. My Outlook, again, is a demo tenant. I don't have a lot of things to do. I haven't done a lot of things in here, but the first thing that is going to tell me is if I want to book some focus time. This means that if I click in there, it's going to take me to my calendar. It's going to suggest some times for me to focus, and it's going to immediately put me in Do Not Disturb. That means if I have a meeting, then I'm going to have my focus time where I can action those meetings outcomes, and also to feel more productive. Also, it's going to follow up on your request. Maybe yesterday I sent an email to Megan saying that I was sending the results shortly and I never sent them. They're going to appear in here. And then you can just go through them and check if you have responded or if you haven't. Now that is Insight, part of my analytics. My analytics is like your work. I don't know how many of you are using Fitbit just to track your steps or the way you sleep, the hours, calories, etc. Well, my analytics is exactly that. It's data-driven, help you manage your network, stay focused or smarter, and Insights is part of this. Now, also another thing that I want to show you is you can also add an email as task. Immediately, you can just add it in here and you can say, okay, I can not come back to Casandra this moment in time. I'm going to do it later. I'm going to just flag this as a task. And then when I have time, I go to my to-do app that is in here, and I'm going to find all the emails that I have flagged them as tasks. So that is going to help you a lot with you following through the different things that you need to action and that you haven't been able to do it in time. The last, because I'm conscious about the time, I cannot believe that this is going so fast. A very important feature is some people like for you to check how accessible your email is, your content. So for instance, you can include that if you want to receive email that have accessibility issues that you need to check before you send your email if your content is accessible. So in this case, I just click Megan at the top. I'm in Outlook Web, and I just saw a legend at the top saying that Megan first accessible content. What does that mean? Casandra is going to show you later on how can you go and check if your content is accessible. So I think in general are the features that I wanted to show you. Those are the ones that can help you to start with, to productivity, but again, maybe those features are not going to be relevant for you, but maybe for one of your colleagues, or if you're managing people or your donors, when they talk to you or you are onboarding them, you can help them with those features. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Casandra, who's going to show you more features.
Thank you, Elena. Super insightful, as always. It should be a couple of seconds before you do see my screen. So I'm just going to quickly prepare these whilst I'm talking before I do kick off. And I'm going to just wait a second whilst it actually moves. The next part that we're going to be covering is really around how do we then go about with everything that we've just learned. Our day-to-day sometimes is quite varied. We go about creating content, consuming that content, then going into meetings. As we say, we're talking about constantly being now on the phone. And then lastly is about ourselves. How do we learn on at our own pace? So I'm going to quickly, I don't know whether you're already seeing my screen. So I'm hoping that you are. Please, the team, let me know. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is actually going into PowerPoint. A lot of us do spend some time in PowerPoint, whether it is because we are putting together a new event, whether we are managing a new brief, or, you know, there are so many reasons why we choose PowerPoint. There is a number of things that we can do out the offset with PowerPoint. The first thing that I'm going to go in here is I'm going to go into new, and I can actually go and click on accessible, and I'm going to put access, if I can type it correctly, accessible project plan. And what this is going to do is it's going to bring a number of templates that have already been loaded within Office that provide an accessible template. And what I mean by accessible is the fact that it can be as easily accessed by someone that is with a screen reader, with a keyboard, or with a mouse. So again, super important. You can also load your own templates so that you have them available in there, so you make them accessible and people will be able to then search for those. But for today, I'm not going to be using this. I'm going to go into a blank presentation. And how many times have we been with a blank presentation? We want to make it visually impacting. And to do that, sometimes it takes an awful lot of time. And we are not all marketeers. And even if you are marketeers, sometimes you're actually designing it is what is quite difficult and it's quite time consuming. So you will have seen that here on the right hand side, something called design ideas is come up. And design ideas is an intelligence service within Microsoft 365. It's basically artificial intelligence that is going to be using what I put into this presentation to visualize, but also create a much more accessible PowerPoint. So I'm going to show you a couple of things. The first thing that I'm going to show you is inserting pictures. We start a presentation. We want the presenting slide to be something that is eye-catching. So I'm just going to go into my files, and I'm not going to select one, but I'm going to select 2 and 3 different pictures. And usually what happens is they just get inserted like that. If I was to do this manually, it would take me a little bit of time for me to reshape, resize, and kind of really make it in a way that is actually acting. So you can see design ideas is already starting to suggest the different ways that I could potentially be actually presenting this. I'm going to go for this one. And as I go for this one, you can see a number of things already happen. As I said, this is not just about making it look pretty, which is great, but we wanted to be doing much more than that. In here, you can see that I've got something called alternative text. And again, alternative text is super important in the sense that without alternative text, if the person is not able to see the picture themselves, if they're using a screen reader, unless you actually put alternative text, nothing is going to be seen or heard by that person. What Intelligence Services is already doing for me is auto-populating it. So it's been automatically generated. A large red chair in a room, I think is kind of taking the cushion on the back. But what I can do is then say, well, actually, it's not a large red chair. It is 2 chairs I could potentially put in here. 2 chairs in a room. Or I could potentially just generate the description for me or mark it as decorative. By marking it as decorative, what it means is someone with a screen reader would basically go over it. The screen reader wouldn't stop here. To basically just put the screen reader on, the only thing narrator needs to be done is pressing Control, Windows, and Enter on your keyboard, and it will automatically bring the narrator on. And again, super easy to use. And if you needed to remember what that shortcut looks like, going back to the Ease of Access Center that Elena mentioned before, we'll be able to give you that information straight away. I'm going to show you a couple of other things that actually happen when using design ideas. So again, by going into a next slide, I'm going to go into an agenda. We're going to go introductions. I'm going to go then into work group, lunch, and close. And I'm going to close this window in here and just allow, again, for design ideas to come in and actually read the information that I've put. And there is a slightly different tone to this now, because what you can see in here that is happening is it's also understanding the context of what I've just written, and it's suggesting ways in which I can actually present that without me having to go and find those symbols or those little pictures that would actually be relevant to what I'm trying to say. And the last thing that I'm going to show you here, again, using intelligence services, a lot of times we have timelines, for example, for events, for managing what we're doing. So we could potentially be saying, okay, so we are in April 2020, we have service users training, then we have May 2020 event management kickoff, and then I'm going to put June 2020 donors get together. And as I do that, design ideas again is going to try and look at what is actually that I'm putting in, and you'll see that there are a few number of things happening in here. And it said, actually, you're putting a timeline. So if you're putting a timeline, I'm going to suggest a timeline and I'm going to plot it for you. And of course, this is a very simple example, but imagine when you actually have a whole event to coordinate that you want to represent on a roadmap. Super simple. The only thing that is actually needed is to have a timeline and a milestone. And that way, design ideas is already picking it up for me. Okay. So this is PowerPoint, but I know not all of us actually spend time in PowerPoint. So I'm going to show you a couple of other things. One is on Excel. I'm going to go back to the file that actually Elena showed not very long ago. So within Excel, again, using the same technology with intelligence services on the back end, one thing that I can do is really interpret any data that I've put in here without really complicating myself too much. There is something called ideas at the very top. So if I click ideas, it would just take a little bit of time. We need to remember that obviously this actually is powered by Azure services, which requires that internet access. It's a very simple table. So what it's telling me is actually we couldn't identify any significant patterns, because it doesn't just look at the table and try to visualize it, but it'll also try to give me trends. So again, when you're looking at larger pieces of data, this could be super useful. I can simply come in here and then try the sample data and insert that slide straight away. I can then copy it and put it wherever I want, send it on an email. Super simple, only one way. Okay, so we've done Excel, we've done PowerPoint. I'm going to go into Word now, because I think that's probably another of the preferred tools. The first thing that I'm going to say is this documenting here is being taken from this website, from the Charity Today website. I have actually tampered with the document itself, so the fact that it has errors is not to say that the website is showing any errors. It actually showed 100% accessibility checked, but I've made some modifications for the purposes of what I'm about to show you. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is down here, Accessibility Investigate, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to magnify it. I'm using Windows plus to go into magnify, and then you can see in here exactly what I'm looking at. Yeah, Accessibility Investigate. What this does, this is continuously running against any of my documents, and you have them across Outlook, you have them across Word, you have them across PowerPoint, and you can check whether there are accessibility fails, I guess I could call them. I'm just going to come out of that for a second, and I'm going to go into the document itself. So if I go into review, I've got check accessibility, and it's going to bring me this little pane over here on the right-hand side. And on that pane, what it's actually doing is checking against accessibility best practices. So it would check things like, oh, this picture has alternative text missing. The super simple thing about this is I can actually just click on the arrow and say, I'm going to add it straight away. So if you're working with very large documents with many pictures, you don't have to guess which picture they're referring to, because I can simply go and put it in here. The other thing that it's telling me about is, hey, this image is not in line. And what that means is a lot of times we try to wrap text around images. And what happens is someone with a screen reader would then not be able to identify where something starts and then finishes. So again, it's about kind of starting to be more aware of some of these things. And then we have things like, for example, hard to read text. Things like down here, you can see that I've used a color that is a lot lighter than it is recommended. So how do we go about changing some of that? The other thing that you have within Word as well is editor. An editor, you may recall in the past, we had something like spelling and grammar or check your spellings that you could use in the past. Editor goes one step farther. Editor basically checks not only spelling and grammar, but it also looks at clarity, conciseness, the formality of things. So for example, if I come in here, it could be, oh, at the moment, do I want to just say now? So again, it gives me a number of different options, and I can simply click in there and replace it. It also, I can actually just go into the grammar, and then it will highlight where the issue is, and then it will give me my suggestions. I can read it aloud or spell it out. So again, super, super useful. Okay, so now we've developed a lot of content. We think that it's ready to be consumed, but a lot of the times when we are developing content, especially within PowerPoint, it means that we are about to do a presentation. And I know for a fact that every time I do a presentation, regardless of how many times I've actually talked about the content, I always get nervous. So one of the things that it helps with those nerves, with that anxiety that comes with it, is being able to really rehearse and get feedback on what to do, what not to do, how to improve. So I'm going to show you very quickly how we can actually leverage technology to help us with that as well. So I'm going to go into actually the deck that we were in a minute ago, and I'm hoping that it's not. There we go. It just takes a little bit of time. And there is something in their slideshow that is called Rehearse with Coach. I'm going to click on it. Okay, so I'm going to start my rehearsing, and I've asked for real-time feedback. So let's go, and I'm going to show you what happens. So someone with a physical or mental impairment that has a long-term substantial adverse, hey, there is my first one. Try to avoid reading from the slides. Summarize your key points. Okay, well, you guys, you know that I always want to try. Oh, there we go. Another one. You guys might be offensive or non-inclusive. And you get the point in here. There are so many other things that it will actually advise on. So I'm going to pause this and just exit it so you know what actually happens after. So as I do that, a little rehearsal report is going to come up, and it's going to tell me, hey, you've done a good job rehearsing, keep the hard work, your pace was just right. If I had started to speak too quick, it would have told me to kind of try and slow down. If I also go into a monotone voice where you actually bore people, it will tell you, hey, try to kind of change a little bit your pitches. And then you saw that I used fillers. So here you have, to sound more polished and confident, try to avoid using some of those fillers. So this is super useful. This is about you gaining confidence in your ability to be able to deliver a super pitch. So again, one that I absolutely love. So we've talked about consuming information. Now I'm ready to present it. So the next thing that I'm going to do is actually go and do a meeting. This is, I'm going to show you as much as I can in here because I'm obviously in the call in here, so I can't join a new call. Otherwise, it will cut me off from where I am. So I'm going to go into the screen where all of us are. And this could be as, hey. So this could be as simple as me joining a normal meeting. This is a live event, so there are some subtle differences, but I will call them out. But every time I go into a Teams meeting, there is a number of things that I do. And the first thing that I will always do, unless there is a particular reason for me not to do, is to actually start recording. We are already recording. We have this on screen. And the reason why I do that is because I want to provide an opportunity for people to go back to that content and consume it at their own pace. Also, we have to be mindful of people not being able to make the meeting at the time that you've suggested. So being able to provide that flexibility is really empowering to individuals. So start recording unless there is something sensitive that you believe it can't go in a recording. So it should be by default. The other thing that you would do, or I would do, to make sure that it's a fully inclusive meeting is going into the little ellipses, the 3 dots on the menu. There is something called show background effects, and you may have noticed already behind me that this is not my house. This is not my background. If I move a little bit too much, you could see that actually my surrounding, it goes a little bit slower, and that's expected because I'm actually using a background effect. So with background effects, I can actually choose what my surroundings are. And this has accessibility at the heart of it. This was designed by one of our engineers who lip reads. And she was talking back with her parents back in India, and they used to go into a coffee shop, and it was quite noisy. And she thought, you know what, this is super difficult. I can't focus on my parents. I can't focus on the conversation because there are so many other things happening on the background. So, and that's how background blur came about. Obviously, since background blur, we now have effects and you can make it a little bit fun. I would always recommend try to not make it too noisy because it kind of spoils the point to some extent of trying to focus on what you are as a person. But especially nowadays, whereas we are all kind of confined to our own houses, bringing a little bit of fun to it, it can be quite a good thing too. So again, background effects, think of it not just from the perspective of accessibility, but also privacy. You know, if you are in your own home, you want to make sure that people in the background are not seen, or, you know, that your kids, if you, like me, they interrupt me about 1,000 times a day and they just walk in. How do we actually kind of control or manage that to some extent? Super useful. The next thing that I'm going to show you in here is you should have is actually, it's a bit slow, so I'm just going to try and catch it up, is turn on live captions. And the live captions is a great feature. And this is something that I use very, very often. And the reason why I use it is you can tell I am a foreigner. I have been in the UK for 21 years plus, so it's not going to get any better. This is as good as it gets. But sometimes when I go into a meeting, depending on the noises, the background and everything else, I can get a little bit distracted. So having everything in writing in front of me is super useful. The good thing is I don't have to let anyone know that I'm actually using closed captioning. So the live captioning in here is for my view and no one else's. So again, that's really empowering to individuals, not having to disclose a particular need to be able to really benefit from what's happening. So just a few things. Okay. So we've done all of this. We've said, okay, we've consumed the meeting, we've made it available. So what happens with the recording? Okay, so I'm going to go now into where the recording itself goes. I'm going to go back into Stream. Microsoft Stream is where all of your videos, after you have actually closed the meeting, is going to be uploaded. There are a number of things that happen that are super useful. Let's just do a refresh of this page for a minute. Okay, it's going a bit slower now than I wanted it to, so I may try to turn on my camera. Okay, let's leave it a second. It's loading. And whilst it does that, with Stream, I'm really enabling that self-paced learning. There is a lot of reasons, as I said, why you would want to do that. I know that one of my colleagues, he always say he has autism, and he said, you know what, I find it super useful to be able to read the transcript at the same time that people are presenting. And the reason why I do that is because sometimes for me, the slides are too busy for me to follow. So having that transcript really, really helps. So there we go. It's a little bit slow. As I said, we're making a lot of use of our home bandwidth, which we knew was always going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I can show you now what's happening. One of the things that are happening here. One is this transcript. Just by me having automatically click recording, there is a transcript to the video that I've just done. I can edit it, I can search it. So if you think of maybe 2 hours, 3 hours long, and I only want to go to the part where you're specifically talking about narrator, for example. 1 second. I'm just going to mute it because I know that you can't hear it, but I can, and it's quite distracting. So I can actually search specifically the keyword, and it will take me straight to that second. The other thing that you know that is happening here, now I've got captioning, and I hadn't had to do anything other than click recording. With recording, I get my transcript, I get my captioning, and I also get how many people were within the meeting. So let me just show people. And here we go. And let's just give it a second. Okay, it's loading. But basically, you'll be able to go, if we have, let's say, 10 different presenters, like today when you do receive this, and if it was uploaded into Stream, you'll be able to jump straight into my little head and go to where I am talking. Or if you wanted to go back to where Chris was talking, again, you can just jump backs and forths as you wish. So super useful. And then your Stream link, you can simply then share it in your own communities. You can even download the video itself and download the transcript file if you want to make it publicly available, for example, as we would do following this session today. Okay, so we're talking now about self-paced learning. We're talking about how we consume information as individuals. So I'm going to go into one last part that I want to show you today. And I know that we're already a little bit kind of tight on time. So I'm going to try and be as efficient as I can in here, especially because this is going to go now into the internet, and I'm being very cautious of how it's going to work. So one of the features that we are super proud about is the 2015 hackathon winner, which is called Immersive Reader within learning tools. Immersive Reader actually uses dual senses. It uses the audio and the visual, which is a proven methodology to aid with comprehension and basically decoding of information. So you can find Immersive Reader across all of the M365 platforms. So you'll have it in your OneNote, you'll have it in Teams, you'll have it here within the Edge browser as well. And even if you're using your iPhone within OneNote, you'll be able to use it there as well. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to do once again, the magnifier, which I'm going to do Windows and then a plus, which will allow me exactly to show you where I'm going to be looking at. Okay. Let's just go. So you can see in here is at the very top of the Windows search bar, or the Internet Explorer, no, the Edge browser Explorer window. And you can see that's what Immersive Reader is. So I'm going to come out of it now that you know where I'm going to be clicking. And I'm going to press, and it's going to give me a number of different options. You can see already what's happening. It's identified my previous preferences. My previous preferences meant that when I click on text preferences, I can choose my background. I can then decide what works best for me. We know that sometimes the white background is something that a lot of people can struggle with. So being able to choose how you want to consume information is super important. The other thing that I can do is decide whether I want text spacing or not. I can also increase the sizing of my text. And again, I'm not using now magnifier for this. I'm using it within here. And then once I go back into Immersive Reader, it's going to recognize the selections that I've made right now. I can also go into reading preferences. Maybe I want to be able to just focus in one line at a time. When we designed this was designed with kids with dyslexia in mind, but it serves so many other purposes. So look at just being able to change, then I can actually just focus on that particular area. I can also go into grammar tools. Grammar tools, again, this is super good for people that are learning to read. They need a little bit more support around comprehension and so on. So there are many reasons why you would want to come in here and use the grammar tools. So by clicking on syllables, what it does is it actually splits the syllable. This helps with the reading as well. You have other things that you can do, like, for example, choose the color that the different nouns are, or the verbs, or the adjectives, and so on. So again, really, really easy to then decide what it is that as a user I want to be able to use. And I'm going to ask, hopefully, my colleague Casandra, because there are things that within the testing and we've mentioned that we can't do, but I'm quite keen to show you on the read aloud. So I know that she's already showing in here. If you click on read aloud, Casandra, for me, one of the things that we've been working a lot with, you need to click at the very top where it says show system audio, where it says presenting give control. There is a little box besides the give control, and there we go. Perfect. And now if you click again.
Discounted rates.
Excellent.
Tools and technologies that can make it.
So you can see a really, really good voice. So we've been working, and it's just been released currently only in English US, is the new neural text-to-speech language. One of the feedbacks that we heard, because this is being used quite a lot by students, one of the feedbacks that we heard a lot is, you know what, this is great. But actually hearing to a robot talking to you the whole day, it can be quite tiring. So we're now releasing this new neural text-to-speech, which Casandra just shown for us, which sounds very, very natural. And it's making that immersive experience so much better. Thank you, Casandra, for that. And I think with that, that's everything that I'm going to show you today because of timing and because I think you probably are thinking, wow, this is a lot of things. We haven't even touched in a percentage of everything that is available, but hopefully it gives you a little bit of a flavor as to the many things that can actually be done, and they're super simple to actually access. So back to maybe you, Chris, I guess.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yes, it is back over to me, and thanks to both of you for that. There was a lot to cover, and I know we did run over everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. I appreciate we're all very, very busy, but we still we wanted to make sure that we get all the best information that we possibly could to you, and Casandra and Elena were very happy to do that for us. So thank you very much to both of you. Also want to say thanks to Eve. She had to dart, but I wanted just to extend a thank you and extend her thanks to all of you for joining us today. We do have a considerable amount of questions actually that I want to make sure we cover as well. So we will be going through them. If you need to dive off, that's absolutely fine. We're going to stay around and answer them, and they will be included with the recording after the fact that we send out in the next week or so. So let's dive into some questions, shall we? So to kind of begin with, there's a lot of questions that have come in from that are sort of we can band together around sort of a use point of view, and a kind of requirement point of view is probably the best one. So to have these accessibility features available, is there, do they need to update to a certain level of software? Do they need the right level of Windows, for example, to be used, or do they need to have Office 365 or just have the individual applications? Could you give us a little bit of background about what exactly those requirements are to be able to have these running for yourself and for people within your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll cover some of it and let Elena as well to answer. But of course, we are showing pretty much everything that is available at the moment. There are a few things that we couldn't show you today, but are rolling out. We are continuously listening to feedback from our users on what is needed, what is not there, and we're continuously rolling out. It's one of the beauties, and I guess at the same time, one of the biggest challenges, if you say, of being in the cloud is that ability to being able to actually push new things out as needed rather than waiting for a release timing. So yes, there are a lot of things that we've shown today that would be available only on Windows 10 and Office 365 applications. There are other things like, for example, check accessibility, editor, and so on that you will have on previous versions of it, of Office 2010 and up. So again, it very much varies. I wouldn't despair if you actually go into your office and say, actually, I don't have any of this. The latest features are going to be in Office 365 for certain. There are things that you can still access if you're not within those. The features that we've shown, for example, like dictate, again, they should be if you are in the latest releases of Office Pro Plus or Office 365 or Office Applications as it's called now. Windows is slightly different. So Elena showed us a lot of things around ease of access and so on. That has changed dramatically from Windows 7 to Windows 10. So if you're still running Windows 7, your view is completely different. And that's one of the biggest changes that has happened actually to the interface itself, is how much and how easy it is to interact with that interface when it comes to Windows 10. So slightly different to the options that you do have in Windows 7. So I can share, and I will, a place where you can check what is actually available depending on what version you have. We also have a resource available, the Disability Answer Desk, who will be more than happy to actually just take any questions. And it's a simple chat that you go on our website. And what they'll do is you'll give them what your scenario is, and they'll tell you whether it's available, not available, or what you need in order to make it happen. Yeah.
Great, thanks for that. I mean, that'll be a really helpful resource. We do have a lot of questions around sort of, I can't find X on my Windows 10, or how do I turn this on Windows 7, Windows 10, that sort of thing. So if to share that with us, and we'll be able to push that out with the slides and the recording, that would be really, really helpful. Thank you for that. Next question, how can people encourage other employees to use these features?
Elena, do you want to take that one, or you want me to?
I can take it. Thank you. About this is a new voice, also is a culture, as we were talking at the beginning. Is I think we're aware. You create awareness, and these sessions are great. That's what we have been doing internally. People may think at the beginning, maybe I don't feel that I'm going to need because I don't have a specific disability. But as you can see, every single feature can benefit each of us at a specific time of our lives or our work. So I think just creating the awareness, also making sure that the right people are have them, so they can just champion those and be advocates with your colleagues. Because if you don't know what he needs for you, how can you benefit from them?
Elena, we can't hear you totally very well at all. I think your connection sort of jumping in and out. Casandra, would you mind?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. So I think what Elena is actually alluding to is this is all about culture, right? And a culture starts within the organization itself, in the sense of how do you engage with your employees? Make sure that you're setting example. Sometimes we are too quick at actually asking for something without implementing it ourselves. It's a lot easier to talk about it than actually going and doing it and putting the effort into it. Within Microsoft, we've actually built our own accessibility champions community, and we see them as a key pillar of the way that we go into an extended way with our own employees, right? It's about raising awareness, the fact that there is a need to make that happen, but it's also about raising excitement about this, because this is not just about enabling a few features or enabling a few. This is about really empowering everyone. So we have super strong messaging from the top down, and then all the way again from the champions out. So super important that you have a network that is going to help you build that messaging out. Super important that you have the right resources available to people to access. So if there are questions, because one of the things that we hear a lot is when you start deploying all of these things, a lot of people don't know that these features are actually available to them. So this is a over time learning, I guess. It's a learning curve. Everyone will start by saying, hey, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. Have you tried X? And I tell you an example. Within Microsoft, we've been fully focused on how do we make our interactions more accessible. So we have, I guess, potentially 3 messaging that we actually send through constantly to all of our users. One is make sure that you always check accessibility. We check accessibility just using the accessibility checker. For example, the way that I do it is I have in my own signature saying my emails have been checked for accessibility best practices. That not only reminds me that I need to do it every time before I click send to an email, but it also reminds others. And you know what's interesting? The amount of emails that I get back saying, you know what, I didn't know about that feature. and the content of the email was nothing to do with my signature. But because they see that link, they'll go in there. It raises awareness. The other thing is subtitling. It's super easy to actually go into the people that you've been used to work with and decide that you're not going to use subtitling. So if we don't make it a standard, it's really hard to then go and ask for them to do it as a one-off thing. So what we always ask is, say, every time that you present any content, you need to have subtitling available. If you're making it in person, make sure that your subtitles have, your presentation has subtitles. If you do it as a live event, make sure that people knows that there is closed captioning within the live event, and so on. So that's the other one. And the last one, I think, is we've talked about the check accessibility, we've talked about the subtitling, and it's also about the flexibility. So we keep on reiterating those messages across all of our newsletters, communities, and I would reiterate, it is about reiteration, and excuse the pun. It is about not just one message, but it is about that continuous ongoing messaging of why this is important, why we're behind it, and what are the benefits. So yeah, sorry, long-winded answer. But
a good one. So thank you very much for sharing that. Really appreciate it. The next question from Charlie is there a way of making, in inverted commas, these accessibility features with a specific word without having to sort of activate them via the click of a mouse?
So yeah, so obviously you have all of these have the option of narrator. So if you have the narrator open, you'll be able to just call it out. As Elena mentioned, we have Cortana. You can ask Cortana to open any of them. Cortana works in a number of ways. You can type it on the search bar. You can click the little circle that is beside the search bar, or you can say, hey, Cortana. By the way, you do need to set that up on the settings tab to make sure that it does recognize when you do say, hey, Cortana. But it is something that is, as I said, I think we always need to take a little bit of time to making our experience personal so that we have all of the settings that we need for our own experience. The other thing is obviously you have shortcuts. So for people that uses keyboard and don't use mouse, so pretty much everything has a shortcut. So you'll be able to activate it. And I've used a number of them today. For example, Elena used the Windows divider. That's your Windows key with the arrows. Depending where you point the arrow is where the Windows is going to go to. If you use Windows and plus, it's going to activate my magnifier. If I do Control, Windows and Enter, it's going to activate my narrator. And again, every single thing has a shortcut. It's really kind of understanding what's your preference and then just looking it up the first time so that you get used to the different ways.
Great, thanks a lot. Next question from Chris, but another Chris, and it's not for me. Are there any resources for autistic people or others with cognitive impairments, dyslexia, dyspraxia, learning disabilities, etc.? And we may have covered some, but I was wondering if there's anything else that we should be making people aware of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a really good point. And that's actually a topic that is super close to my heart. My son has ASD, so it's something that I'm super passionate about on how do we enable, because there are some very subtle things that can be done to the day-to-day that will help with managing and supporting individuals in their day-to-day. I think, as I said, we've set a number of these that would actually apply to these. We talk about the recording of meetings, not assuming that because you've said it once, it's okay. Actually having that recording and that transcript and allowing people to process information in their own time has very much a cognitive side to it as to why you would want to do it. The other things around making sure that you're not bothered by the different notifications, because we're talking about distractions, we're talking about noises, background noise that you don't really want to happen. So using things like focus in Windows that Elena mentioned, super important to make sure that it allows you to kind of minimize those distractions. And then within the website, we actually split everything by the different interactions, and you have an area that is specific to cognitive. So I would strongly recommend that you go back into those links, and it will tell you a lot of those tips. The one that I would highlight is, and Elena mentioned it earlier, is the Tech for Mental Wellbeing. That was specifically put together to help with being mindful about yourself. How can I actually better take care of myself whilst I'm working? Being mindful of others. What does the impact of my choices have on other people? And then actually talking about the environment itself. So reducing noise, minimizing distractions. And it gives you quite a few tips that we've had some very, very positive feedback. So I would strongly recommend to have a look at those.
Thank you. Our next question from Rose asks if we could perhaps share some further details on accessibility in emails, particularly is there a way you could set up accessibility requirements of recipients, or does this have to be done on their end?
Yeah, that's a really good ask, actually, and one we wanted to show, but we couldn't be on us today. But as a user, I'm able to actually say that I want to receive accessible content. So what that means is when a person starts to type my name on the to line, you know that Elena showed us the mail tips, as in, oh, you forgot your attachment. You can actually say, I want to receive basically accessible content. So what happens is when the person starts typing the name on the to line, they will get a little message on the very top that says, hey, Casandra prefers to receive accessible content. And it reminds the user that is about to send it that that's the case. So that puts the onus not only on the person that is sending it, but also on the person that wants to consume it. Because I think there is a shared responsibility on both ends to ensure that you're receiving things that are good for you. So yes, there are a number of settings that you can change within Outlook as well to make sure that every time you receive an email, it's actually with the right font, with the right color background, and so on. And that's very simple to actually do through the standard settings within the Outlook client itself.
Great, thank you. And we've got last questions, or two questions together from Ingrid. She asks, in Teams, is there a way to have everyone on the same screen, or is the maximum 4 people at a time? And then a follow-up question is, can you export contacts from Outlook into Teams?
Okay, so one at a time. Yes, there is a way. We're actually just rolling out the 3x3. It's something that is being asked a lot. So that's your 9 windows of videos that you can have at any one time. It also allows you to pin those videos. So if you have more than those, I may want to just select the people that I want to continuously see on the screen. Super useful, especially if you have someone like a BSL interpreter coming into a call and you want to make sure that it remains all the time, regardless of who's talking. You can pin them onto the screen. But yes, we see 9. There are no plans to extend that. And I know that there are other providers that provide a lot more. I always I'm a bit in 2 minds on that one. I think there are only so many people you can look at once without getting distracted as to what it is that they're doing or what you're presenting or whatnot. We do see the business case and the user case on why you would want to have a full screen of videos, but big enough for you to be able to then still interact with those individuals. So yeah, that's coming. The Teams and Outlook interaction. So the way that Teams works is you need a couple of things to make it fully in terms of what the service actually provides. And one of them is actually the exchange. Exchange is what is on the back end of Outlook, right? So that's basically the servers that make the Outlook client kind of work and do what it does. So when you connect Teams for the first time, potentially the only thing that you do have is Teams in its own. However, there are a couple of things. One is the Exchange connection, and the other one is the SharePoint Online. Those are key to making Teams end-to-end service a good one, because the Exchange integration will give you your Active Directory users, all of the contacts and so on that you have in there. Then you will have also the SharePoint where you have all of your files and so on. I'm going to try and also say something just in case that what you meant by the question is the fact that you want contacts that are not on your organization to be part of Teams. And if that's the case, I don't know the answer, but I can take it and respond back. So hopefully I covered the 2 angles on that one.
I think so. Thanks very much. Well, we are at the end of our webinar. Thank you very much, Elena and Casandra. You've been great. Shared some great insights to kind of kick off the conversation and of how to take accessibility and the text and the tools and technology, back into the organisation. If you do want to get started, you can get Office 365 for non-profits through Charity Digital at a discounted rate. Just head over to our products section on our site and search Office 365 and it'll pop up. Thank you again for our gracious panel. Thank you very much. That was great. And thank you to all of you for joining us and sticking with us throughout. Don't forget to go over and check out our COVID-19 resource hub that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. We'll also be sending out all our resources after this, the slides, the recordings, and every sort of link that was mentioned. We'll be doing that in the next week or so. Within that email, we'll also be including a feedback form. If you wouldn't mind taking a couple of minutes just to fill that in, would be greatly appreciated. And let us know. We're always trying to improve our webinar program as always. Next week, we have our next in series of our COVID-19 podcast series. They run every Tuesday, and coming up this week, we have COVID and digital, the elephants in the room, where we're joined by Trillium to discuss how we can sort of manage digital in flight. Our next webinar will bring back the one and only Cub from the NCSC to talk about how you can keep your charity secure during COVID-19. Thank you all again. Stay safe, stay sane, and we'll see you soon.